What's the worst thing about being in prison besides being in prison? The voting rights, that's what. Even though Labour announced they would change the law to allow prisoners serving less than 3 years the right to vote, they stopped short of reinstating it completely, bravely going against the recommendations of the Human Rights Commission, the Waitangi Tribunal, and yours truly. So what gives? Why are we only for human rights when it's convenient or when we're in opposition? What's it going to take to finally get universal suffrage in this country? And am I the new Kate Shepherd? So, you're probably wondering why you're here, given that you had no idea about the law and you seem to not really show any interest. Well, I want you guys to write a song that I will then record with a group of celebrities and release to the public as a means of getting them on board with the idea that all prisoners should be able to vote, not just those sentenced to 3 or less years.
It's such a long sentence you just said to fit into a song. It's like a charity song, like a Band-Aid.
I mean, who knows where the money will go?
It is a good cause.
Thank you.
Like, it's a tricky one.
Yeah.
But, you know, pop music has successfully championed, like, problematic things in the past.
I wouldn't call this problematic.
Yeah, like, blurred lines.
No, this is not.
Did you want us to make you blurred lines?
In February 2013, I was sentenced to 4 years in prison.
Yeah.
And then I ended up doing 22 months of that sentence.
Was there an election while you were in?
Yeah.
Oh, there was. So
Yeah.
you actively had an election that you couldn't vote in.
Yeah. It was humiliating. I was devastated to find out I wasn't even going to get the opportunity to vote. We're celebrating 125 years of suffrage. And my own mother was used as a woman to be held up in terms of achievement. And here was I, her daughter, who had not been allowed to vote because I was inside prison. So in 2010, it was a national government that amended prisoner voting rights so that anyone in prison could no longer vote. Is that something you guys are still in favour of?
We are, so we're just very clear about the fact that if you've got a custodial sentence and you're in prison, then you lose that right.
So you don't think it's an arbitrary...
It's very hard in New Zealand to get a custodial sentence.
Is that always the case?
Absolutely it is.
You could be in prison for a number of different reasons.
But if you decide to offend seriously enough against our community and it's bad enough that you go to prison, then there's some rights that are going to be removed from you.
It's definitely not accurate to say that the only people who go to prison are people who've done really bad things.
Yeah.
A vast majority of the people in our prison system are classed as low security.
Okay.
So
what does that mean?
It basically means that no one has any current concerns about their behaviour right now. Like, the crime that they committed or the harm that they did was, like, pretty specific to the circumstances they were in when it happened.
Right.
So it's really inaccurate to say that everyone in prison is some kind of violent offender who poses a serious risk to New Zealand.
Yeah.
So Mark Mitchell is wrong.
Let them vote, no matter what they did. Let them vote, even if they flash their dick.
Do we want to encourage people who flash their dicks to vote?
Well, yeah, theoretically, I'm in favour of everybody voting.
Yeah.
The point of the song is that, like, it doesn't matter, like, the worst thing you could imagine someone doing, they still should be able to vote.
Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Let them vote, no matter what they did. Let them vote, even if they killed a kid.
Yeah. I do believe that.
New Zealand prides itself on being the first country in the world to allow women to vote and to have universal suffrage, but actually we don't have universal suffrage when women inside can't vote and young people and men inside can't vote.
Let's get Kate Shepherd off the $10 bill, I hear what you're saying.
Yes. But actually that's a good point.
My view is a vote, it's not a God-given right. We've
It's
had
a
to defend
Bill of
it.
Rights given right.
Well,
so
right.
in that way, you disagree with the Bill of Rights.
No, I think the Bill of Rights is important, and I know that...
What if I said this to you? What if I said that this is inconsistent with the New Zealand Bill of Rights, the UN Human Rights Committee, the European Court of Human Rights, the Supreme Court of Canada, the High Court of South Africa, and the High Court of Australia? Would that be enough evidence for my case?
No, it's not enough evidence.
So the UN Human Rights Committee is...
So Māori are, in 2018, 11 times more likely to be removed from the electoral roll.
What? How?
Because of the prison voting ban. 51% of the male prison population are Māori.
Fucking hell.
It's even higher for women. It's about 64%.
And what is the percentage of Māori in terms of the general population?
15.
Oh, cool.
There's the impacts of colonisation, which I see as living and breathing in our prisons. You remove an economic base, you steal land, you remove people's access to culture and language and identity of who we are, then the impact of that flows into disproportionate numbers of my people going inside.
Waitangi Tribunal wrote an extremely salty report, basically being like, how did you guys fuck this up so badly? So they were like, it breaches the treaty principles of tino rangatiratanga, active protection and equity. And that's particularly important because Māori electoral participation is a really massive part of, you know, the treaty principles and how they play out today.
Look, I'll be honest with you, I'm not involved or enough in what's going on around with Waitangi Tribunal and the settlements and the work that's been done there.
Don't you think, as the spokesperson for justice where Māori are overrepresented in prison, that it would be fairly crucial to be up to date on the recommendations of the Waitangi Tribunal?
So I listen very carefully to what is happening right through our criminal justice system. Most prisoners coming into the correction system have never voted.
So then don't you think one of the things we should be doing for ensuring democracy in New Zealand should be how do we take a group of people who aren't voting and empower them to engage with the system?
Well, absolutely. We should be delivering maybe a civics program while prisoners are in prison, right?
It would be funny, though, to deliver a civics program and then say, but not for you.
Let them vote. It's the right thing to do. Let them vote. Yes, we mean rapists too.
Do you mean rapists as well?
I mean it all. I just think there's something weird about hearing it in a pop song.
I think you got to imagine more voices on it as well. So, like, what kind of celebrities have we got?
Yeah, who have we got?
Jennifer Ward-Leland can do that, but...
We actually feel it sends a powerful message. You have offended so badly against the community that you're going to lose some rights.
Yeah.
And when you come back and you rejoin the community, you're going to get them back. And maybe, just maybe, they might reflect and think, actually, there's a value attached to that. Because I lost it when I was in prison, and I'm getting it back when I come out.
Sorry. As someone who's lived that experience, to deny people their human rights and justify that by saying they're going to value it more later, like, it's just so ridiculous to me. The voting system sets up like a cycle of Māori not participating. If you have a lot of Māori locked up in prison, when these people go back to their communities, you've got a number of people within a community who aren't voting. They're also parents. Their kids are never going to see them vote.
Because voting is a really social act. All these like political science professors came into the Waitangi Tribunal hearings and were like, yeah, we know for sure that when you take away people's right to vote, you know, even if it's just for a couple of years while they're in prison, the likelihood of them not voting for the rest of their life is really high. Partly because it's actually quite hard to get back on the electoral roll, and partly because, like, having been told, like, we don't give a shit about what you think, people are kind of like, oh, well, fuck you then.
Surely the Waitangi Tribunal saying something like this is discriminatory, should ring alarm bells in anyone's head and go...
So there's going to be a very positive view taken around how we work together moving forward to be able to address the social issues that are creating the harm.
I wish that was an answer to the question.
Well, that is my answer to the question, because are you going to get me to look back and fix all the problems from the past? I can't do that. What I can say is that we'll move forward.
Racism doesn't happen in a bubble. You have the founding relationship of this country as we know it as Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And then we've had active policy and legislation like the Māori seats representation, like the Native Lands Act, like the Tohunga Suppression Act that said, OK, well, you can't actually practice Māori, you know, ways of doing things. These aren't like stories that have no impact today. These were active levers of legislation, like our Foreshore and Seabed Act, just ongoing. This is like ongoing law has been used as a patu against Māori. And if we just pretend and live in some bubble, like, oh, let's look to the future like it doesn't, then that's just blind and actively protecting systemic privilege, and I have no time for it.
Are we going to turn around because someone jumps up and says, oh, you know, we don't agree with prisoners not having the right to vote? No, we're not.
Not someone, the Waitangi Tribunal.
Well, we believe...
And the High Court.
We believe that
and the
right...
UN Human Rights Commission.
We believe
and
very
the Australian
strongly...
Supreme Court.
Well, we believe...
And the Canadian Supreme Court.
We believe...
And the European Human Rights Commission.
I know you're looking for loopholes and you're trying to put up an argument with the different groups and that.
Point. We believe that in the face of overwhelming evidence, that is a breach of human rights.
Okay, so we just have to agree to disagree on that.
Yeah.
Let them vote. Let them vote. This may be a vex motive. Let them vote. It's in breach of the treaty. And if you don't agree, you're a big fucking racist. Let them vote.
It's really weird because, like, in opposition, Stuart Nash called it a nasty piece of law. Jacinda Ardern said voting is much more than a right.
Yeah.
And Grant Robertson said it was like a disgraceful attack on democracy. I think what they're struggling with is how much political capital they're willing to spend on getting access to democracy for people who are pretty marginalised in our society. And frankly, I think that's pretty shit.
Yeah. So, like, the 3-year limit, what's the philosophy behind that?
Well, we're just taking the law back to what it was pre-2010. I mean,
But why?
Well,
why not go back to what is the right thing?
Because, like, we have these discussions, Cabinet makes collective decisions and we all stand by that decision.
So could I safely assume that any Labor MP that stood up in Parliament in opposition saying that all prisoners without limitation should have the right to vote, that they would likely have held that position through Cabinet but have been outnumbered and therefore we reach a compromise? Like, is that how the government works?
Well, look, you know, you win some and you lose some. This is government.
Is this a loss for you?
Oh, I'm not going to go into the details. I think it's a balance between, you know, the extremes of the argument.
When you talk about the balance, you know, I could point to the Waitangi Tribunal, the Supreme Court. Who on the other side am I pointing to who doesn't want this?
National.
So you're balancing national against the Waitangi Tribunal?
I was being a bit...
No, I mean, I love it. But, like, when I'm putting things on the scales, what's going on the other side, other than bad vibes?
Well, we just think that this is where it needs to sit at the moment.
Isn't it the role of a government to be diligent as to which views they take into account?
And this is the position that we've landed on.
Okay.
And I thought when I got sentenced and got put into prison that, fuck, this is the lowest my life could get. Like, my life was going to be over. I'd never get a job. I'd never be accepted back into normal society. But then when my son passed away at 13 years old, when I was in prison,
I'm sorry, I didn't know that happened. That's awful.
Yeah, rock bottom I found was like a glass floor. And it just kept going lower and lower. And just before we were getting locked down in the unit one night, the woman came out and they performed a woman's haka, ka panapana, which is from the East Coast, where I'm from. And that meant, that meant the world to me. You know, I'll never forget that. And that they wanted to honour me and that loss in that way. So I want to represent these women as best I can. So I will be here speaking out until people in prison are given the right to vote.
Life with no democracy, that would feel like prison to me. And being in an actual prison would also feel quite prison-y. So the life they're living, that's double prison. It's up to us to make a difference. Voting rights, the Bill of Rights, why they gotta be so inconsistent? Don't need songs about curing disease.
It's perfect.
Don't need songs about helping the kids.
It's perfect. I'm a social justice warrior, and I've made merch already. Do you want one of these? Cool, because I actually haven't got any celebrities on board. Everyone in the crew, you get a T-shirt. You get a T-shirt. Joseph and Laura, you guys get T-shirts too.
Thanks.
You get a T-shirt.